Hey guys, welcome to Digital Srini channel on YouTube. In this video and in the next 2 or 3 videos, I'm going to focus on deploying your trained machine learning model, whether it is a regular model or traditional model that you have trained using Scikit-Learn or a deep learning model. Let's learn how to deploy that so others can use it. In this video, I'm going to focus on local deployment because this is very important for you to understand exactly how the structure looks like. And once you deploy it locally, then let's focus on deploying this to cloud using some services. If you have your own servers and all that, great, but oftentimes we don't have that type of luxury. So we have to rely on some third-party providers, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And everything that I'm going to show is going to be free. So if you want to pay, you can go ahead and pay some of these third-party companies. But again, let's save all of that discussion for the next video. But for now, let's just make sure we know how to train I hope you already know how to train a machine learning model. I'm going to focus on a very simple model for this exercise, which is using Scikit-Learn linear regression to train a multilinear regression model. This is going to be a few lines of code. And the more important or the most important point here is once you have the pickled trained model, how do we provide a user interface using a browser? Again, look at the URL here. This is just local URL. Okay, right here on this system. So this is not something.com / your application. We'll get to that next tutorial again, like I mentioned. So in order to achieve this, again, this is our end goal right here. So a browser, a web page where the user can enter 2 inputs, and then when the user clicks on this button, it gives the output, and the output is basically the output of our machine learning prediction. Right, model.predict. That output is going to be displayed here. So for that, you definitely need something called Flask, because this allows you to do this web development in Python. And also you need to know a little bit of HTML and not a lot. And HTML is probably the easiest to learn anyway. So this is the plan. So let's get into the code. And before actually showing you the code and working on the code, let me explain what Flask is. And again, you can actually write Python to be executed right in the browser, and there is a new project called Brython. I don't know much about this, but this is exactly what they claim, because Python is not like C++. You don't need to compile and then execute and all that. Python is a scripting language just like JavaScript, for example. So technically you can execute this in the browser. I don't recommend that. You need a backend, you need a server where your Python is residing, and then it's actually doing its thing, especially when it comes to deep learning, right? It does its thing and then it gives you the output. So all you need your HTML to do is provide the input from the user to the backend, and the backend does its magic, provides the output, and the front end, which is our browser, is going to display that. So for that, Flask can be an amazing approach because it provides a web framework for us to work in using our Python that we are already used to. So you don't need to learn something new. And there are a few other things. Learn a lot read it on your own time about Flask. I'm going to show you the core basics of this. And frankly, if you know this, you can actually get by. But it talks about what is a web framework. Yeah, go ahead and look at, again, this is the page that I found from a quick Google search. And what is Flask? Flask is a web application framework written in Python. So we know that, I just mentioned that. And there is a WSGI web server gateway interface, because you need a way of actually talking between the server and your web applications, right? So that's what this one enables. And also look at WorkZig. I think we'll talk about this, not in the next one, but the video after that. All of this may sound intimidating if you have never heard this before, but this is literally single lines of code in Python, as you will see. If you are like me, who learns by looking at the code and then reverse engineering, oh, this is how it's working, let's jump into the code so you can do that. Okay, so I already mentioned that the plan is to is to take two inputs. One is the percentage of population that are smokers and the percentage of population that are bike riders, and then you can predict the heart disease. And here is the link to the data set that I'm going to use, and you can go ahead and download that very simple CSV file. And it's again, it's got like 2 or 3 columns. We'll see that in a second when we import our data. So step number 1, we have to train our model and come up with the trained model. And then step number 2, of course, we'll worry about deploying. So step number 1, pretty straightforward. Like I said, let's go ahead and import the required libraries. Seaborn is not required. I mean, I'm using it for plotting, so you can see exactly what's going on. So let's read our hard data.csv file. It says no such data. Let's go ahead and check what the present working directory is. So that is not the working directory that I want to set. So let's go ahead. Sorry. Let's go into files for training. Okay. Sorry about this. I should have been a bit prepared. Okay, so now I'm here. So let's do this one more time because that's exactly where I have my data file residing. Okay, so now I have my data frame, and if you are curious, you can open and you can see I have just number, biking, smoking, and heart disease percentage right there. So the goal is to fit this to a model and then let the user input 2 variables, and then we can do the prediction. That's pretty much it. Okay, let's drop the first column because that's useless. And then if you are curious, let's go ahead and look at the biking versus disease, heart disease. So obviously the more you bike, the less prone you are to heart disease, at least according to this data. And of course, smoking, the more you smoke, the more there's a risk of heart disease. Somewhat linear relationship, but there is some relationship over there. So how do we fit this? We know this. I have done this in one of my older videos. It was a while. That's why I'm covering this quickly now. Okay, let's drop the heart disease because this is our Y, and only use the 2 columns, which is smoking and biking for X, and then our Y is obviously the heart disease. Now let's go ahead and break that into training and testing, and let's import this linear model from Scikit-Learn. You can fit this many ways. You can use random forest if you want. I'm just making sure I get the fastest way to our trained model, so we can focus on the core essence of this video, which is deploying it so others can use it from a browser. Okay, let's instantiate our model for linear regression and go ahead and fit that model to our training data set. This should be almost instantaneous. And let's go ahead and print out the score. This is 98.1, not bad. And now let's do prediction. We have our model ready. Now we are doing our prediction, model.predict. We are just predicting it, and let's go ahead and in fact, look at the mean squared error, 0.00029. I'm very happy with that. So I am going to save my model. And when it comes to these Scikit-Learn models, I save them as pickle. So let's go ahead and import pickle and pickle dump model.pkl. So now I have my file and I can go ahead and use that in the browser. But before doing that, let's do one quick sanity check. Let's go ahead and load the model. Okay. Now, these are the only 2 steps you need from now on. We are done with training. All we need to do is load the model. Once the model is there, go ahead and predict it. So this is how you need to import or input your numbers. So you're biking here and you're smoking right there. Percentage of population biking, percentage of population smoking, and this is how the array structure is. So when we input it through the browser, we have to make sure we get into this right format. That's it. So let's go ahead and predict this, and this is a very high biking and very low smoking population, so the percentage of heart disease is low. Obviously, if it is the other way around, so let's say 20%, but then more than 50% are smokers, then you have very high percentage of heart disease. Okay, so far so good. Let's clear everything and start from scratch, meaning now we trained everything. Now we have our trained model. Okay, now I'm back to the right directory. Now we have our trained model. What do we do? How do we deploy? Okay, so for that, you need Flask. And let's look at 2 files now, app.py and index.html. So the structure is going to be, if you look at this, app.py is right here, and I have a folder called templates. In templates, I placed my index.html. I'll talk about why in templates in a minute. And in another directory called models, I have my model.pickle that I just trained. That's it. These are the three things that you need. Ignore other files because these are for the next video. How to get it into a web application on Heroku. Okay, just a sneak peek right here. So you just need app.py, templates, and models. That's it. And in the templates, we have index.html, which is what you're seeing on the screen. So with that knowledge, let's open app.py. So how do I load the model, predict it? By getting the inputs from the browser. So for that, we are going to use Flask. Go ahead and pip install Flask if you don't already have it. Very straightforward. Just Google search for Flask and then it's pretty straightforward installation. And NumPy because we want to deal with numbers, and pickle because we want to load our pickled file. And within Flask, the most important thing that we will be using is this Flask class, and then the requests because we want to send requests, and then render template. Render template means go look into the templates folder. Go look into the templates folder, and then it fetches this index if we say go fetch the index.html. But that's what render template is. Most of the time we reuse pretty much the same structure. This structure will be the same no matter what application we are going to run in the next 2-3 videos. So just keep an eye on this. Keep an eye on this structure. So I'll spend some time explaining this in this video, and then probably not into this depth in the upcoming videos. Okay, so we know these three. So let's go ahead and run that. Now, first thing first, let's create our app. I'm giving our app a name called app, and it is customary to do that. It makes your life easy in future if you don't give weird names to this. You can if you want, but I just gave this app. And I initiated with my Flask class and __ name. And in addition to that, you can basically add additional arguments like, okay, where is your static folder? For example, if you are intending to upload or get an image from the user, so that image can be classified, you need to store that somewhere. That needs to be available somewhere. So you can make it available in the static folder. And so those things, again, we'll get to that when we get there. But for now, let's go ahead and start our app right there. So I now have an object for my app. So what do I do with this app? We'll get down first, and let's also load our model. You know how to load the model, pickle.load, and I saved it under models directory. So I'm just going to just load that. So now I have my model loaded. So far, so good. Now comes the meat of this app.py file. First of all, we need to define the route. So we need to define a route. In this case, I'm defining the route to be home. When I put slash, it is home, wherever this present directory is. If I do /predict, that means it goes to, think of this as, I don't know, digitalscreening.com. This is the .com, the root. And this is .com/predict. Okay. For those of you who know HTML, this probably sounds like too basic, but again, my assumption is you know nothing about Flask and nothing about HTML. So that's what we're defining here. And this is a decorator. I hope you watched my video about decorators, but even if you don't know, this is just a decorator. And it links, when I say the route, it links the relative root of this URL to the function. So this is the function we are defining. And it knows now where to execute that. What is that route is, or route is, whatever you want to call it. So this is our root directory. And running the app sends us to index.html. So basically, I defined my function as home. And when that function gets invoked, it renders the template. Again, render template means it looks into the templates folder and then finds index.html. And then it runs that. That's what this line means. Okay, let's go ahead and run those and then move on to the next step, which is, okay, now what to do? Where is the data coming from and all that information? So you can use the methods argument of the root. Like, for example, you have your app.route, right here, or app.route. In here, you can actually add the methods argument which actually tells you what other methods are followed in here. So post is, did I write it down here? Yeah. There are two common ones, get and post. There is home and a few others, but get and post are the ones that we use quite often. Get means a message is sent and the server returns the data. Again, we are interacting with the server and this browser, which is the user interface. And post, which is what I'm using in this case, is used to send HTML form data to the server. So for example, in this example, post means the user is going to enter something in the boxes that we provide. And when the user clicks on the button, it posts it or it sends it to the server. Now the server should take that and do something with that. In our case, it should take those values and get it into the shape that I showed you earlier, into the NumPy array with smokers and bicyclists, and then provide that as input to our model and then predict it. So the post is basically get that from the form that the user is going to submit. So that's what the method is. Okay, so this is the decorator to this function. And what is this function? This function is the predict function. Obviously, we are predicting. So first of all, we are going to get the values from the browser. So request.form.values is basically fetching the values for us from that browser. And we'll have two values in this case. So first of all, anything that you get from the browser, any input is a string, right? Just like you get it from user input in Python. It's a string. We need to convert that into an integer. That's exactly what I'm trying. Well, I'm converting that into a float here because the value can be 25.4 or something. So in this case, we are going to get two inputs and convert both inputs into a floating point number. That's exactly what this is. So this is nothing but a list, and this is just a for loop, right? So for each of the values in this list, go ahead and convert that into a float. And then convert that into a NumPy array. What this does is it converts this list of A and B, of smokers and bicyclists, into this form that we need for prediction. Remember when we did our train.py, I said it needs to be in this form right there. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. Take these two numbers that we get from the user and convert them into this form, NumPy array, convert the list into NumPy array, and another another bracket right there if I want to use just plain English terms. Okay, and then once we have this ready, we are ready to do model.predict. So we're going to do model.predict these features, which is basically A and B, whatever those values are. So you get a prediction output. The output can be a long float number, so let's go ahead and round it to 2 decimals, and that's what we are going to assign as output. So this part should be pretty straightforward to most of you, because once you get the numbers, and this is just model.predict, right? Now it's going to return render template right there. Okay, which one? Index.html. We only have one HTML file in this case. So it's sending this output back to this index.html. And how does it display? It basically puts a text called % with heart disease is, and this is the placeholder, and we are filling that with our output value, whatever we get. Let's run this so you know exactly how it looks like, but before running, we'll look at index.html, because obviously we keep talking about index.html, so you need to know exactly what's happening there. And just a couple of lines before we exit is this file, if you run up to this point, it does nothing, because this is just a couple of functions. I hope you know what if name equals to main means, right? I mean, so when the Python interpreter reads the source file, reads this file, it first defines some special variables. And __ name is one of the variables that it actually defines, and it equates that name variable to whatever the file you're executing this under. If this doesn't make sense, again, this is not a tutorial about if name equals to main, but go ahead and read it somewhere else, or I'll try to make a video on this topic. But the __ main is what it assigns to this current file. If I'm actually importing this app.py into something else, then my name variable equals to my app, the value app. Okay, so basically if I say if name equals to main, that means if I'm running this code in this file itself, go ahead and do app.run. That's it. Okay, so and then it actually does my app.run here. So I'm going to execute this file and it's going to show things in the browser. That's what this means. We'll revisit, we'll come back to this file in a minute, but with this understanding, let's get to our index.html now. Okay, first of all, think of this as something that you put on every HTML. In fact, even if you do not put that, it works fine. Okay, but this is go ahead and put. There is a reason why we do that. Again, I don't want to make this a HTML tutorial, and this evolved, I should say, HTML quite a bit, a lot, because the first time ever I did any HTML coding was in 1995 or 1996. Back then it was so simple. You just have HTML tag /HTML head meta, but now you have CSS like styles. You can put JavaScript and a whole bunch of stuff. So I do not know a lot, but I know just enough to make things work. That's what I'm trying to convey to you. So HTML, again, anytime you open HTML, at the end you close it, right? So that's the HTML block in here. Within your HTML block, now you have a head block right there, which is closed right there. Within the head is basically your heading. Think of it as your heading. Within your heading, you have, okay, meta, where you're defining what the character set is. If you don't know any of this, just copy and paste this. That's it. You should be fine. The only thing you will be changing is the title. You see the title right there? This is displayed as part of the title, meaning when you run the page, when you run your web page, you see on the top of the page, do I have it here? You see how it says, what is Flask Python? Here it says Brython. Here it says presentation. This is basically title. So when you run this code, you'll see heart disease % as the title. That's it. So hopefully up to this point, you can copy and paste. And this line, let me see, width equals to device width instead. I think this line enables you to, yeah, I did add a note right there. This line enables you to display whatever you're showing. Well, not just on the browser, on your desktop, but also on your phone if you want to open it. So in a way, think of this as, this is not really optimizing it for your mobile devices, but at least it resizes it such a way that it makes it easy to interact with your page on a browser on mobile devices. Okay, so far so good. Now this part, I'm defining my body and I end my body. The body part is ending right there. Okay, it's starting right there. And the background is black. I just want to display this under black background and a few other things, div class login, and it gives you, I'm thinking whether how deep I should go. This gives you like a form. And I'm putting my style. H1 is the size. Think of this as the largest size. H2 is smaller, H3 is smaller, H4 is even smaller. So these are all in relation to some standard format, pixel size, let's say. Okay, so first thing first, on my page, I want to show heart disease prediction. Let me open this. It makes things easy. Okay, here, you see how this shows heart disease prediction? And then you have two boxes, and in this box it says % population biking, % population smoking, and then click this button. Remember this. Now let's get back to the code. So this heart disease prediction, large text in violet, this is what you're seeing. And then comes our actual form. The actual form, the action, is again, action is where the data is sent, because how do we link this HTML file with the app I just showed you? In the app, you have the method equal to post, and look at this /predict, and look at this predict function. So now let's get to index file, action, URL for predict. Get the URL for this predict, which is basically /predict, and the method equal to post. So it's going to post this to the backend, these two values. And in the backend, we are fetching those values by using this request.form.values. We are fetching those values. Okay, so here it's pushing it. Think of this as pushing this to the backend, and the other one I showed you is fetching it in the backend. So what are we pushing? Input type in this case is text, and name equals to %biking. And this is text, means we are entering numbers, and the numbers are converted. Because it's in the text format, they are converted into floating point right there. Okay, let's get back. And the name equal to %biking. I'm just naming that box as %biking. And what should we display inside the box? %population biking, right? That's exactly what we see. %population biking right there. That's what you see there. And required, yes, of course it's required. You cannot just push the button. If this is not allowed, it comes up with a message. Same thing with the %smoking. So you have biking and smoking. These are the two text input types. And once you do that, the next thing is the type is submit, which means it's a button, and then the class is button. You can copy paste this in any program, any of your application. And that button says predict %population with heart disease on it. So the key point here is this is the post method, and this is the URL that it's actually pushing to /predict. And we are fetching whatever these two text. If you can add another text, in which case when you request.form.values, you get a list of 3 things, right? And then you can change your code accordingly. So I hope this provides a good introduction for this application. So now you understand index, a few lines of code, and what else? Oh yeah, after this I forgot to mention the final thing is prediction text. Go ahead and put your prediction text right on the browser. So if we come back here, you see prediction text. This is exactly what we are. So when you do render template, it actually sends this prediction text to your index.html. And when you put these 2 brackets right here, and you put your prediction text, it's basically looking at that prediction text equals to and puts whatever you have there. So what do we have here? Prediction text with heart disease is, and then it puts this output right there. So that finishes this entire index.html. And that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and run the app. When I run this file, it's going to run everything. And then if name equals to main, which it should be because I'm running the same file, it runs app.run. So let's go ahead and run this. And it's running, and it gives you a URL where, because we are using Flask, I believe this is usually the universal URL with the port number 5000. So I normally copy with Control-C, but Control-C is to quit here. So I right-click, copy the raw text, and now let's go to the browser and visualize our application in the browser. Okay, so I just opened a brand new tab. Let's go ahead and paste this and return. So there you go. Now this is actually running locally on a server, on my local server, and you can see the URL right there. So let's go ahead, enter %population biking. I don't know, let's make it a very healthy city. Let's say 50% or 50.5% are biking. Why 50.5? I want to see if decimals are accepted. Sometimes, again, this is how you test once you kind of build it. And %population smoking, let's just make this only 5% population smoking, okay? And now I need to click predict %population with heart disease, and you see it says % with heart disease is 5.79. And you see how it went to predict page. Now let's go back and make sure you understand that. You see how it's going to /predict page, and it got request.form values because we submitted the value for this. We submitted the value for this. So it's getting, anytime you have this type, input type equals to text, and you submit it, it is posting it. And when it's posted, we are getting it by using request.form values. Do this a few times, you'll understand how to work with this. Okay, so I hope you found this to be useful, at least for beginners. In the next tutorial, let's take exactly the same code and deploy this online, so you can give the URL to anyone you want and they should be able to work with yours. So basically deploying your code as an app so others can use it, but not an iPhone app or an Android app, but a browser-based app so it works on any device, which is my favorite type of app, by the way. So please stay tuned for the next video, and like these videos if you really like it. Tell your friends, hit the subscribe button. Thank you guys.